But collectively, so high tech, so nerdy. So welcome. So what I want to do tonight is the last thing I want to do. Let's start there, because the last thing I want to do is give you some sort of gimmicky type of process to go through for you to leave here and think, it's just another type of program where you're going to promise a whole bunch of stuff and not see it change. That's not what I'm about. My whole thing is always about how do we create a sustainable lifestyle change? How can we start to make a change that is doable, that is easy, that you can not have to fight your spouse or some loved ones over, so that you can be able to make it manageable so that you're able to carry it out, okay? So what I wanted to do is start to dive into how you can, and I put up there, get ready for summer, and I hate to put that up there, but what I wanted to get across is this should be something that you're getting ready for and able to sustain and do for a long time. Okay, so that's my goal tonight. So we're going to talk about some things, and it's going to be a little counterintuitive, but I'm going to try to support that with a lot of what we understand with the latest and most up-to-date understanding of how we can start to change our metabolism so that we can make sure that we stay lean and healthy and keep the weight off and take some weight off. Sound good? Okay, so just a few little warm-ups here. Let me know if any of these are you. I'm going to order the broiled skinless chicken breast, but I want you to bring me lasagna and garlic bread by mistake. If you put a crouton on your sundae instead of a cherry, it counts as a salad. And the good and bad news about the new weight loss formula. You can see them there in the small little. So, when we ask the question, why is it that we want to lose body weight? And the biggest thing is, obviously there's a lot of health reasons, right? The higher amounts of body weight is a stronger association with things like heart disease and stroke and cancer, all the cardiovascular things. Diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome. It has a profound effect on back pain, everything from neck pain and shoulder pain to low back pain. And then, of course, the other effects, sleep apnea. We also have lowered self-image, but then there's other reasons why people want to. Maybe it's that they won't have a goal in mind. They want to achieve something where they're able to run, or they're able to chase after their grandkids, or they're able to get back to playing hockey, or whatever the case may be for you individually. It can be different and varied for everybody, but understandably, what we want to do is make sure that health is our number one priority. And I would say that because if we focus on what health is and how we achieve it, the end product should be that we get back to a weight that is comfortable and sustainable, okay? I was going to put up there, look better naked too, because that is also one that a lot of people don't really talk about, but that's one of the things too. So that can go with lower self-image. So when some of you have seen this process before in terms of other things that we've talked about, but in order for us to make sure that we've got a foundation and a principle in place, we got to make sure that we have the right and correct principle. So this is called the Peter Principle, and what it stands for is we've got the premise or the principle plus effort plus time equals extraordinary results. Now, here's the thing, is that you can have a completely wrong premise or understanding of how or what you're supposed to do. You give it a ton of effort and you give it a ton of time, but you don't get the right result. And similarly, you can have the right premise, but you haven't given it enough time and you haven't put in any effort. So you could have the greatest exercise program in the world, but if you haven't actually gone to the gym and done anything, you're probably not going to see the results that you're looking for, right? Similarly, if you have for some, they may have the right effort and the right time, but the results aren't there because the foundational principle is incorrect. Let me give you an example. For years, the cardiovascular associations have professed that steady state cardiovascular exercise is one of the best ways to keep your heart rate and your aerobic base really well maintained, right? So you get on a treadmill, you go at the same level, the same speed for 45 minutes, that's your exercise routine. What they found and people have been doing it for 20 or 30 years, right? They put in the effort, they put in the time, but they still saw the same number of cardiovascular events post-injury or even as a result of, they're seeing a lot of these folks that I don't understand, I exercise 4 times a week. what they determined is that these people were going at such a steady state that they never challenged their nervous systems or their cardiovascular system to escalate into a state where they actually had to get a stretch within their arteries and their heart and their arterioles. So what happened is that their cardiovascular systems were never challenged to the point where they were able to sustain a higher load. So what these folks did is they would get into a situation where something would cause stress to them and they would have a heart attack or a cardiovascular event because their systems couldn't handle the increased pressures and the increased rigors of what was going on. Does that make sense? So we had an incorrect premise or foundational principle, but we've given it effort and given it time, but they weren't seeing the change. Okay, so now the most current philosophy there is no, we need to have some sort of interval type of training where we escalate up and down into a higher rate where we really get the heart rate up a little bit. So we challenge the cardiovascular system so that it has the resiliency to be able to stretch and flex and adapt to the rigors of that exercise. Okay, make sense? So this is going to be instrumental because when it comes to things like understanding how do we make sure that we lose weight, we need to have a good foundational principle. We need to have an understanding of how the metabolic system works so that way we can, for lack of a better term, manipulate it or use it to our advantage so that we can start to get it spiking and working in the right way that we want it to. Okay? So, like I said, when it comes to understanding this principle, we need to understand how lifestyle affects our health. And we need to understand that in order to make sure that we maximize it and optimize it. Okay, so one of the biggest reasons why we end up putting on weight and body fat and other things is because oftentimes we don't have the right principle. And what I mean by that is that in our genes, we have a blueprint. Our blueprint is to be genetically lean, strong with lots of muscle tone. The blueprint is there, but the environment and the things that we do, really the choices that we have, ultimately end up causing us to put on more weight. So sedentary lifestyles, we've got a lot of calories, but we're not really well what is the quote is, we are one of the most well-nourished nations, but we're undernourished in terms of the actual nutrient value that we're getting. So we're overabundance of calories, but we're not getting a lot of good nutrients into the systems. And so the idea there is that if we can start to get that correct and understand that the choices and decisions that we make influence the genetic blueprint and then express extra body weight versus how do we get it to express that lean, strong muscle tone, okay? And I say that because there's not a, you look at anthropological things, you go to any of the museums and you see these 65 and 70-year-olds that are just lean and, you know, how do we get to that state where their bodies were burning fuel, such as fat as a high level, they were strong, they were flexible and resilient, right? So to understand a little bit how lifestyle or how the environment influences us, think about altitude. If you were to look at a newborn child who's born at sea level, they have the blueprint genetically to make red blood cells in abundance when the level of oxygen changes within the atmosphere. Okay, so they may not have a lot of red blood cells, but if you take them to a higher altitude, they're automatically going to start making higher red blood cells, just like you and I would. We might be a little winded for the first couple of weeks, but ultimately, that's how runners start to train themselves, right? They go to high altitude and they start to increase their red blood cells so that way when they go back down to low altitude, they've got an abundance of red blood cells that can carry oxygen to their tissues. So the blueprint is such that the body knows how to adapt to the change in the environment. The lifestyle or the environment is what causes the blueprint to be read properly or in a different way. Does that make sense? Okay, everybody's with me. Good. So what we want to do is try to reshape the belief system around how does our metabolic system work, how do we make it work better, and how can we make it work more efficiently, okay? So metabolism, this probably isn't new to a whole lot of folks, but that's one of the key things that drives how we choose to, or sorry, how our bodies burn fuel. It can be affected by any number of things. It can be affected by the foods we eat, the amount of exercise that we get, the temperature within the environment, our stress levels within our bloodstream, like within our environment that's causing stress changes within our bloodstream. It can be influenced by eating foods at the right time of day. Obviously when you eat right before you go to bed, you're going to end up not burning off a whole lot of that energy, so that energy ends up getting stored as body fat down the road. So how do we change the amount of food and the type of food that we do, and how does that influence our metabolism? We're going to dive into that. As I said, stress levels can influence how your body produces energy. Cortisol is one of the stress hormones that is instrumental for you adapting to the given stress. So boss comes in and yells at you at work, you've now got a higher stress level. What that does is cortisol is released, and cortisol is a thing that takes energy such as the sugars out of your liver and puts it back into the bloodstream. Why? Because in a state of stress, your body needs energy to burn, and it needs good, quick burning energy. Sugar is a really good way to burn a lot of energy. It breaks down quickly, and you get the ATP and all the things that you need for your muscles to do their job. So when your body is under a state of stress, it takes the glycogen out of your liver and starts to break it down into smaller sugar bits so that your body can use it for energy and fuel. Sounds like a really good thing. The challenge is that we're living in a situation where we're under some chronic stress, so cortisol is constantly being released, so you constantly have sugar in your bloodstream. Excess sugar in the bloodstream translates into extra body fat. So how do we get rid of the stress? Well, you can kick your boss out, or I won't say your spouse. I didn't say that. You got to try to remove the stressors if you can, or try to modify the lifestyle in order to make sure that you offset those stresses, right? So exercise is a fantastic way. It's one of the best ways to dissipate stresses. Having fun, having a good social connection, having love and abundance from your kids, or having, any way that you can do things that modify your stress levels is going to be paramount. Again, when it comes right down to it, metabolism's key predictor is going to be the adaptive physiology. That same kind of effect as we have with the altitude is how do we change our physiology such a way that we start getting it working for us. Okay. Still good so far? Okay. So yeah, stress creates a stress response. The body in its innate wisdom has an ability to adapt to stress. It releases things like cortisol to make sure that you've got sugar in abundance to help you get through it. Again, when you've got extra sugar in the bloodstream, that goes through the bloodstream and then ends up being converted into body fat. Insulin's job is to try to take that sugar out of your blood and put it into your cells where it can be used by those cells for energy for all the different metabolic things that it needs to. Again, that extra sugar gets converted. So what ends up happening is that you cannot get extra body weight or body fat without carbohydrate intake. Okay, so when you start to get more of that, you're going to get more of the body fat. So, leptin. Does everybody know what leptin is? You guys talked about it, right? Leptin? Okay, it doesn't get a whole lot of racket. Leptin is the anti-starvation hormone. It's released by your body fat to let your brain know that you need food. So when your body fat levels start to drop, your leptin level starts to drop. That's a signal to your brain to start eating, to start letting you know that it's time to eat, because this thing is built for survival. It's built to continue on, right? Look at Keith Richards. That guy will survive anything. But the leptin, as it's released from the brain, it tells the brain that you need energy. So, hey, you need to start eating, okay? When you've got increased body fat, you're going to have increased leptin levels. But as the leptin levels start to drop down, your brain starts to engage and starts to get you to eat. When your leptin levels are high, you start burning fat. Okay? So the other thing that can be done is that when you start eating calories or start eating at all, that's a signal to shut down the signal from leptin to let your brain know that, we've got the food coming in. So the leptin hormone starts to decrease because now it recognizes that there's food in the system. So we don't need to worry anymore. It's not as concerned about the starvation. Everybody follow me so far? Okay. Because here's how we can start to manipulate that, is that when we talk about leptin, as your calories decrease, you're going to end up getting a signal that your leptin levels have dropped, which is going to start to lead to a decrease in your metabolism. Why? Because from a protective standpoint, the last thing your body wants to do is go into a starvation period. So what happens is, as leptin starts to drop, your brain starts to slow down your thyroid and slow down your metabolism within your bloodstream. And then we start to get a reduction in how much body weight and fat we're going to start burning. So it's almost to the point where when we start to go on low-calorie diets, we actually put our bodies in the worst position possible to start to consume our body fat and start to burn it as fuel. It's counterintuitive to what we normally think, right? I'm just going to eat less, and that's going to help me to lose more weight. And initially you might lose some water, but what ends up happening is your metabolism tanks, and then it's harder for you to get back on. So then when you start eating again, guess what? Your leptin levels drive up, and your body starts storing as much of it as it can in case it has to protect itself for the next starvation mode that may come. So it's almost to the point where we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we start to decrease our calories, thinking that we're doing ourselves good. So our premise has to be different. Okay? So how can we get our leptin levels to stay low but still continue to burn? So it's telling our brain that, how do we keep our leptin levels high so that we end up burning fat as the preferred choice of fuel, but keep our calories low? That's going to be our game that we're going to start to look at. How do we get that to happen? And there's a really easy, simple way to do it. Okay? So don't fear. And it's different than the other one. I found a better way. Another hack. So, by lowering your leptin levels, by decreasing your calorie intake, you actually increase your fat storage. Crazy, right? Fail, my kids say. But wait, it gets worse. When your lowered leptin levels lead to increased appetite-stimulating hormones, which is your ghrelin, which is another type of hormone. It's the part that tells your hippocampus, the part of your brain, to say, hey, give me more food. Keep going. We got to make sure that we try to stave off any starvation period. So our bodies are primed for fat loss at every other time other than when we try to lose fat. How frustrating is that, right? So how do we keep our leptin levels high? Can we just take some leptin? Doesn't really work that way. They've tried that in some of the research areas, and it doesn't happen in a synthetic form as well as it does that's coming from your own body, because there's a whole bunch of other hormones that are at play there too. So no, we can't do it. So what can we do? Well, we're going to talk about how do we get this thing organized to work in our favor without causing a whole lot of stress to the family, to you, and to everybody else. Sound fair? Sound good? Excited? Okay. Don't eat processed crap. Because when we do, we're going to end up putting ourselves, and I'm going to get into it, but carbohydrates, refined sugars, refined flours really of any type, grains, all of those are going to drive your blood sugar up, which then ends up getting put into body fat. So how do we keep our calories low while keeping our leptin level high, right? But as soon as we start entering carbohydrates, we're going to start to drive our calorie intake up, okay? So how do we get a fat-burning machine by keeping our calories relatively moderate without having to go super high in the, okay? So, anybody heard of intermittent fasting? Little bits? Okay, we're going to dive in here. This is one of the best ways that you can start to hack this, your leptin levels and your metabolism to work in your favor. Okay, so in a nutshell, think of it this way. If your goal is to consume 2,000 calories a day, and I'm not going to say ever count calories, but let's say that your goal is to consume 2,000 calories. 1,000? Yeah.
Is it 10,000?
10,000, yeah. That's like, what's his name? The swimmer? Yeah, that's about his calorie intake, 10 to 12,000 a day. Has he got any body fat on him? Right? The point is that what we've been told, the original premise, eat smaller meals multiple times a day, keep your metabolism going. The trouble with that is that when you've got calories constantly coming in, your leptin never drops, and you end up getting the brain signaling that there's constant food coming in, right? So the idea was that it keeps your metabolism stoked, it keeps the energy going into the metabolism, keeps things going. What I'm going to tell you, though, is that it doesn't matter if you get 2,000 calories spread out over 16 hours or if you get it spread out over 8 hours. It's still the same number of calories. But how can we get the metabolism to kick into a better, higher gear if we narrow the window of eating time, and that way we start to get our systems working better? Okay? So, intermittent fasting, in a nutshell, the fed state is when you eat, and then it's about the period of 4 or 5 hours following that. Now, the post-absorptive state continues. You continue to digest, your body starts to break it all down, and you start absorbing those nutrients for about 8 to 12 hours following. The fasted state starts about 8 to 12 hours after eating. This is when your body starts to burn fat as its preferred choice. So the leptin starts to drop down. You start to consume some of the body, your leptin you're still continuing to burn the body fat because there's not a lot of calories in the system. There's no sugar in the system, so your body starts to use fat as a preferred source of fuel. Okay? Why use intermittent fasting? It makes your day simpler. So what I mean by that is you get up in the morning. For instance, I've been doing this now for about a year and a half, 2 years now. So my typical morning is I get up, I have a cup of black coffee, and I won't eat anything till probably 12:30 or so, usually. And then from 12:30 till 8:30, that's my time period where I'll get all of my calories. And so it makes my life so much simpler. I don't have to worry about anything when I get up in the morning. Now, I know everybody says, eat breakfast. It's the most important meal of the day. Again, another counterintuitive point where everybody says that's the part that breaks the fast. It gets your metabolism going. What they've looked at is that when you're doing it in this manner, your body continues to burn that fat because you haven't consumed anything. And then when you give it the calories, it switches over and gives those calories to where it needs to. But then as you stop eating again, your body switches back into that fat burning state again, and we continue the cycle along. It helps you live longer. They've shown that it actually reduces the telomeric shift within your DNA. So what happens is your cells have only a certain number of Xeroxes that it can make before it starts to get errors and we start getting troubles, right? What this does, though, is it slows down how repetitive or how quickly those Xeroxes are being made. You only have a finite number of Xeroxes that you can make in your lifetime. And so the telomeric shift is such that you reduce the speed at which those cells are constantly being changed over and broken down and discarded. So that's a good thing. There's some fascinating stuff coming out on how intermittent fasting can actually boost your immune system. And what they've seen is that when you go into a period of fasting for anywhere from 1 to 3 days, you see a massive spike within your immune system, and it's almost like a reboot. So they're watching how not only cancer patients, but autoimmune patients can actually reset the entire immune system within a few days of going through a fasting period. Again, doesn't have the sugar, you're not causing stress, insulin levels drop, insulin resistance decreases. That's the ability of the cells to actually take in sugar from the insulin. Insulin binds to the cell and the sugar is attached to it, and then the sugar transfers through the insulin into the cell. Insulin resistance means it can't bind to the cell, so you can't get the sugar in the cell. So diabetes is there's an extra amount of sugar floating around the bloodstream because it can't get in. There's increased insulin resistance. It won't allow it to attach to the cell to deliver it. Okay? It's much easier than dieting because you're still eating, you're still getting your calories, but you're using it through a shorter period of time. Okay? I love this. Diets are easy in the contemplation, difficult in the execution. Intermittent fasting is just the opposite. It's difficult in the contemplation, but it's easy in the execution. It's counterintuitive to what we've always been taught. But proof's in the pudding. When you look at, like I said, a lot of the athletes do it. A lot of runners, a lot of like CrossFit, a lot of those athletes do intermittent fasting all the time. Truthfully, I only do it about 4 or 5 days a week, so I cycle it, and that way it's a little bit easier. So that way, you're not missing out on breakfast with the kids or doing something else, but it's just a way to keep your body going into a good state where you're burning calories. Now, the other thing too is, if you're doing it right, you shouldn't feel hungry. So we're going to talk about that too. So ways to do it. So what you would do is, like I said, you may eat from 12 till 8, and then you won't have anything from 8 on, and then you wouldn't eat again for 16 hours, so out till 12 o'clock the next day. In that 12 to 8 period, you're going to get those 2 main meals. You might have a little bit of a snack, but those main meals are going to consist of largely lots of protein, good lean meats, but then good healthy fats and oils. So avocado, macadamia nuts, walnuts. Just use coconut oil in abundance. Has anybody ever heard of bulletproof coffee? Yeah. So you take a cup of coffee, but then you add something like MCT oil or mid-chain triglycerides, so like coconut oil, into the coffee. And some will add butter as well, unsalted butter, so they get the cream kind of taste to it. You put it in a blender and you whip it up it tastes just like a latte. It tastes like a latte.
He does it every morning.
Yeah, it tastes like a latte, right? Yeah. The MCT oil provides fantastic brain food. Like, you literally feel, coffee gives you a buzz, but then you kind of crash down after it. What the MCT oil does is it gives you a buzz, but it sustains it for a longer period of time, so you don't have the crash following that. The other part of that is that MCT oil is really good fuel source. So again, when your body's burning fat, it helps to get the fire started and get things going. Anyways, that's one way to do it. But so black coffee, you could add lots and lots of coconut oil. So when you're sautéing vegetables or when you're preparing foods, you can throw it in a smoothie. It's a great way it's really good for your joints. It's good for your skin. It's good for your hair. It's good for whitens your teeth. It does, it's an SPF of 13. It's got so many different properties to it that are very beneficial. So what you can do is add that in abundance. Like I said, avocados, avocado oils, lots of the healthy types of oils. And then nuts, seeds, lots of vegetables, moderate amount of fruit, because again, lots of sugars in it, simple sugars. You want to try to avoid fructose as much as possible, and glucose, things like that, but really the lean meats and vegetables, right? Okay, so we haven't really changed anything that you probably haven't heard already. I know I got to eat lean meats, I know I got to eat vegetables, but what we're going to do is try to change the time period at which you're going to start to do that, okay? So a couple ways you can do it. The first one is one way, where you're doing that every day, okay? Or in my case, I do it 5 times a week. The other one is you can do 1 day a week where you just do a 24-hour fast. So what that does is it causes your leptin to drop down. You start to get some calories back in. Your leptin levels go back up, but then you go back to another period where you're eating moderate amounts of food. You do your 2 or 3, 4 meals a day or whatever, keeping it in check as far as how much and what you're getting. Okay. The other one is an alternate day. So it's not a hugely popular one. That's the one where you go one on, one off, one on, one off. Socially, that doesn't always work so well. Again, if you've got something on Friday, but Friday's your day to fast, you're not very fun to be with. So the best one, though, for women is the crescendo fast. And what that looks like is you end up cycling it through. So you have about every second alternate day. So you end up going, not the alternate day. It does work better, though, for women, is when you start to cycle it on and off. So let's read through it. What happens with women, though, is that when they're extremely sensitive to the starvation period, okay? So what happens is when they start to get into that state, it totally mucks with their hormones. It totally messes with hormones. So that starts to cause a whole bunch of other challenges, and that's why it's so challenging for women just going through that period of weight loss. Intermittent fasting is really no different, so we've got to make sure that we do it the right way. Like I said, what it can do is that the body starts to ramp up things like your leptin and your ghrelin to let your brain and your hippocampus know that things are not in good shape. So it can throw your hormones out of whack. To extremes, it can start to halt things like ovulation. It can start to affect your cycles. It can, again, cause other eating challenges. So what you would do then is you would fast a few days a week instead of every day. So you might do 2 days on or 2 days off, that kind of thing. But when you do it that way, it helps to get your system kept in check so that you're not throwing things off completely. So like I said, you might do 2 days in a row and then take a day off and 2 days in a row, or vice versa. But as I would recommend here is that what you would want to do is try to do it a few days a week. And you know, as you go along, after about 3 or 4 weeks, you can start to maybe add another day. But to start, I would probably just do 2 or 3 days a week at most and go through that 16-hour period. Now, women, though, they tend to do better with a 10 and 14 split. So you've got a 10-hour window to eat and 14 not to. Again, but what that does is it just gives you a little bit more time to get a little bit more of that period. And again, it's probably going to work a little bit more kind with schedules. So, okay. Again, improving inflammatory markers, gaining some energy. So what you can do is fast on 2 or 3 non-consecutive days. So the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Ideally, you'd want to fast for about 12 to 16 hours. Like I said, 14 seems to be the kind of sweet spot, but you can also read yourself and see how well you're doing with it. On those fasting days, and the same goes for everybody, is that you want to try to stick to doing some lighter type of exercise. So maybe it's some just gentle yoga, maybe it's some low cardio impact stuff. On the days where you're not fasting or not implementing it, that's when you're going to do a little bit more of your vigorous stuff. So if you're into doing the weights or doing a cardio class or something like that, those would be better days to do that because you are getting a little bit more of those calories throughout the day. So your body's got enough metabolic spike from your exercise to actually start your, to handle that extra bit of calories from exercise. Like I said, burst training or high intensity interval training where you're doing a little bit of a surge up and down, you're causing your heart to get a little racy and then slow it down a little bit. Those are going to be your best ways because what they've also shown and seen is that not only does it help the cardiovascular system, but for up to 36 hours following your exercise of a burst exercise where you're taking it into a good panting type of speed, your body has to consume a whole bunch of the glycogen and the sugars that are in the bloodstream in order to carry out that exercise. Once you've depleted that, though, your body needs to get energy to refuel all of its stores from somewhere. And where does it go? It goes to your fat cells to take it because they're in abundance. So you remember the adage, slow and steady cardio, where you go for a long period of time, that gets you into your fat burning zone, you're going to end up consuming more of your fat? BS. Because what happens is you're never going to get there. Your body's going to end up consuming glycogen and the sugar that's already in your muscles and in your bloodstream far before you ever tap into the body fat. Okay, like you'd have to be going pretty darn hard to get to that point where you consume all of it and then slow down to get to the point where you can start to burn the fat on the treadmill. Okay, so go vigorously, get the cardiovascular benefit, burn off all the glycogen, and then metabolically, that process of consuming fat into sugar is extremely slow. So while you're exercising, it's a slow process to try and get that sugar to make energy for your muscles. But guess what? When you're chilling out at home watching something, your body's consuming it and bringing it over from the fat and replenishing all of those glycogen cells properly. So you end up consuming body fat, which then helps body weight. We good? So,
Okay, so what you're saying is for 3 days,
yep.
you do like the 8 hours of eating and 16 hours fasting, or is it a fast for the whole day?
So the best time to do it is overnight because then you don't have to worry about it,
Oh.
right? So if you stop eating at 8 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night, whatever your time period is that works best for you, then you've got from 8 o'clock at night till probably in a 10 o'clock the next morning for most women would be a 14-hour period. So yeah, you've slept through the night and you've allowed your body to get into a better state that way. So then maybe the next Thursday morning, so tomorrow morning, and then Thursday morning, maybe you get up and you have a light breakfast and go about your day and do your higher exercise activity. And then Friday you would do, from Thursday night at 8 o'clock, you wouldn't eat anything until 10 o'clock the next day, Friday. Does that make sense?
Do you have to keep the same time? Like, so you always have to eat, like, say you're doing 10 to 8, you always have to keep 10 to 8, or can you shift it depending on
Yeah,
what
I mean,
time?
you could shift it. I don't think I'd shift it like more than 2 hours probably, one way or the other, just so that you get, your body loves rhythm,
Right.
right? So the more rhythm that you can keep, the better. Now, you go to an event and it's 9 o'clock at night and you're finally being served dinner, go ahead and eat.
Yeah.
But, for me, I'm trying to think, last night I got home, my wife and the kids were home late from dance pickup, and I don't think we ate till almost 8:30 or 8:45. So it was beyond the normal time. I was starving. That's the thing, is like when you're consuming, your body gets used to getting those calories. And I know the days where I've been here at the office and stuff has gotten me off track and I haven't consumed enough calories, my body will let me know immediately because I'll be starving. And that's the nice thing, is that when you're consuming those calories and you're getting an ample amount of fat, you're almost never hungry. So you end up consuming smaller amounts, but they're calorie-dense meals. So it could be steak with, I ate a lot of butter, but like good type of butter, grass-fed if I can find it, but lots of vegetables, lots of oil and avocados and stuff, just to give me the calories that I need. So I still get that same, I haven't added it up, but it's probably about 3,500 calories a day, maybe 4,000, but I get it in a smaller chunk of time. So I'm always eating nuts and seeds and at home for the folks that have nut allergies. No one's ever gone anaphylactic on me at the office. But lots of nuts and seeds, lots of, like I throw coconut oil and coconut in smoothies and just try to get as much of it as I can any way I can. So
So what about like I take turmeric with coconut oil as a supplement.
yeah, great.
Is that considered the same amount
Yeah.
of coconut?
Yeah, because you're still getting it, right? So that's great. Really good for the joints.
How do you do the coconut oil in a smoothie without it being like comfy?
Oh,
It's cold, right? So because
yeah.
I do my smoothies cold, and you can melt it really easily, but as soon as you add it to the cold,
Yeah,
it clumps up. So I'm just
right.
wondering if you notice.
I've never noticed it.
If you have a really good blender, it blends it.
I got a Vitamix, so I've never noticed it. But
Don't
I was just
heat it up
curious.
first. Just put it
Put
in
it
as
in
a.
solid.
plunk it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got.
I haven't tried because I was just like, just imagining.
You know what my favorite snack is dark chocolate, and I literally scoop it out of the container. It's like an Almond Joy or a Bounty. It's delicious. But you get like a whole bunch. I get I have got like the 85% dark chocolate. So I get a lot of antioxidants. I get that kind of chocolate thing that I love. And then I get this big dollop of coconut oil that I get to eat. It's delicious. Tastes like a Bounty bar without all the sugar and junk in it. Like I said, water, tea, and coffee are okay. Yeah. Try to avoid sweeteners. And then again, after 2 weeks or so, you may want to add another day of of fasting in there. Some other things. We want to get those healthy fats like we talked about. We want to get those proteins. Fructose and sugar of any kind if you at all possible. And that's going to make a big difference for making sure that your body's consuming more of the fat and you're not storing the extra carbohydrate as fat. So like I said, low to amounts of fruit. You're better to get the vegetables and try to choose the lower glycemic type of vegetables, so lots of the greens, and try to get them in abundance. Refined or processed foods, those are going to be metabolism killers. Think about how you feel after eating a burger and fries versus, a steak salad, something that way. Limit your carbohydrate intake during the day. Make sure you're getting enough omega-3s in your diet from grass-fed meat, fish, supplementing with omega-3 oils the best you can. Fish oil is a great way to get it, and you get it in abundance. Fish oil is really good for helping strip body fat because, again, it gives your body the right triglyceride cholesterol levels, and it helps to increase your HDL, which is the part that takes all your cholesterol back to the heart and back to the liver to be processed and eliminated. The LDLs are the ones that go out and circulate because when you're in a stress state and you fight a tiger and you lose and the tiger bites you in the bum, you need stress hormones to fight the tiger. So cortisol goes up, and it's the backbone of cholesterol. Cholesterol, is the backbone of cortisol. It's the main component that makes up cortisol. So if you're fighting a tiger, your body needs cholesterol in the bloodstream readily and available because if you're constantly making stress hormones, you need the cholesterol. LDL cholesterol is the type that makes the backbone of stress hormones. So when we talk about all these folks that are on cholesterol-lowering medications, it's because they're still in a stress state that they're constantly producing the LDLs. Their HDL is terrible because in a stress state, you're not trying to pull it back to the liver. You're trying to keep it out in the bloodstream. Okay? So omega-3s help to raise your HDL levels and lower and take your body out of an inflammatory stress state. So they're super, super important for us, for kids, for everybody. We can't get it enough in our abundance from our meat and from our fish, unfortunately, because there's so many impurities within the other things. So supplementation seems to be the only way that we're going to be able to get it readily. Be liberal with quality coconut oil. Lower your omega-6 consumptions from grains, conventional meats, processed and vegetable oils. Again, grains are one of those things that break down into sugar readily and available, which can then cause you to retain more. Conventional meats, they feed the animal grains, and then that gets into the meat, which then you consume. And so you continue to skew that ratio. You get a lot of those omega-6s. Omega-6s are highly, you need them, but they're quite more prominent in the inflammatory cascade. So omega-3 slows down the inflammation. Omega-6 can ramp it up. So if you're getting lots and lots of grains in the diet and you got lots of arthritic and joint problems, you're best to try to reduce it as much as you can. What do I got here? Don't work out an hour before or after breakfast. Try to give yourself a chance to just relax and settle. Try to get to bed as best you can because growth hormone and your testosterone and other levels need to be at their best and their highest to keep your metabolism and your body strength up. So you're best to get into bed. Your greatest times for growth hormone levels are going to be between the hours of 10 and 2. And that's for any one of us that go to bed and at nighttime and wake up in the morning. Not for those on night shift. That gets a little skewed when they're doing night shifts. Don't count calories. Make sure that you're keeping track and simply just, I'm getting this as my meal. And then you can start to watch. All of that funnels down to you start to watch how your body's starting to perform under this. You should notice that your energy levels just really go up. you should notice that things like joint pains and aches disappear. You should notice that your sleep gets better. You should notice that your I said joint pains. You should notice that fat and body weight starts to drop because your body's getting into a state where you're starting to be more efficient. If you see that the last one isn't dropping, you're not seeing a reduction in weight, you're not seeing clothes fit different, then you may have to tweak the amount of calories that you're consuming in that time period. Maybe you're going a little overboard in your portion sizes through that time period, and you just got to watch it. Sneaky if you get yourself to the point where you are hungry, and you may just have to increase your healthy fats a little bit just to make sure that you're sustained and feeling satiated. Ghrelin, that other hormone, is your satiation hormone. So when your body starts to let you know and your tummy's getting all growly and rumbly, that's when ghrelin starts to come out, and the ghrelin. Just figured that out. So, okay. Some more hacks. Did I? Oh yeah, those are the same. Yeah.
So you do your 10 or 12 or 14 hours so you can tolerate without killing anybody. Do you go? Do you go right to a meal or you break into it?
I know you go right to a meal. Yeah, it's an exciting time.
See, what I find is having my meal, because I get my lunch hour at 11, we have a half an hour.
Yeah.
I can't eat a big
Yeah.
meal at that time.
Yeah.
I work in a school,
Yeah.
and I just can't. So I have usually a salad, some seeds and nuts, and, salad dressing with coconut oil, whatever. And that's sort of what I have for my lunch, but
Are you usually able to get that done in half an hour?
sometimes,
Okay.
not always. But usually I start my morning off with a protein shake,
Mhm.
and that's my morning.
Yep. Yeah. So you could you could make the shake, and then start it at like 10, because you said your lunch is at 11.
Yeah.
Are you able to sip away at it for an hour while you're?
Yeah, I could, yeah.
Yeah. So you can make it in the morning, take it with you, and then for lunch, I would just try to make that meal as small and calorie dense as you can, so that you're not having to eat a big, huge volume of food.
Yeah, because I find it too overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'm not one for big hunk of meat at 11 o'clock.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
So then we should be eating like seeds or nuts.
Well, it's a great way to get lots of calories in a small amount, right? So it's that's the easy way to do it, is that you're not going to sit down for a 3 or 4 course meal, but you can get, like on that salad, I would have a small amount, like your proportionate size of lettuce or your base, but then I'd have lots of like avocado and some seeds, whether it be sunflower seeds or something else. Maybe some, pepitos and things like that, just to give you a good zap of some of those fats. Maybe you have something else with you that is,
A
if it's,
hard-boiled egg on it.
yeah. Or some veggies with, I'm trying to think of a good, maybe it's your dressing. It's got like a good amount of avocado oil as the base or something. So, Yep.
On the off days, do you still eat the same way that you would on your?
yeah, just spread it out over the course. So you're still trying to get your lean meats, you're trying to get good healthy fats, and you're just spreading it out a little bit more over the course of the day, and try to go for your 3 or 4 meals. But you're still trying to keep that total caloric intake the same, spread out a little bit instead of condensed. Yeah.
So in terms of protein shakes,
Mhm.
is dairy based to be avoided or is okay?
Great question. I still like the hormone-free, antibiotic-free based whey. Yeah, like it's still an excellent, like the New Zealand-based whey is some of the highest sought out in the world, because it's such a high protein amount. It's got little to no impurities in it. There's no hormones. There's none of the other things. They're cows. It's against their regulations to actually have that. So it's still a really good source. I'm not a fan of soy because of the genetic modification of it all. It's really hard to find any that isn't been modified. So that kind of rules out a lot of the vegan-based type things. But if you've got to go that way, some of the pea-based ones are half decent. I don't find they taste really as good.
I was just, because I have yours.
The diesel,
here,
yep,
Right, so I'm
yep.
just wondering if this is still okay to consume, because dairy hasn't really been touched upon in terms of.
Yeah, so you saw in there, it
So-
made one mention there, try to avoid some of it. I think that's because a lot of the times you're getting conventional dairy, which is usually not the best.
Right.
But like for me, when I do, my coffee, I put 35% cream in it, and I get a lot of fat through it, but again, it's delicious. You learn to really love fat.
But you
It's
drink your
delicious.
coffee black first thing in the morning.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
With coconut oil.
Not if you're fasting, no, you
Not
don't.
in the fasting.
Right.
Yeah, no, not in the fasting period, no. But yeah, no, so like midday, if I get another coffee, I'll put the heavy cream in just to give me the extra body fat, or the extra fat, not the body fat, the extra fat.
We can't use dairy or pea or quite a few other things, nuts. So for the smoothies, we use coconut milk.
Yeah, it's great. Really good base, right? You get a lot of fat in it too. You can even use like the really out of the can type stuff too,
Yeah, no, we
which.
didn't need that.
But like the coconut milk is, but like cooking, you can make meals with coconut cream, a lot of Thai dishes, things like that.
Yeah,
So
I do
you're,
that. Just when my son's making his, it takes too long for him to open the can. I don't think we're 16.
yes,
He's 18.
easy is better for sure. But no, that's a great way to do it. Almond milk is another option. It's got a lot of calcium in it. It's so funny.
Nuts.
What's that?
Can't do nuts, so they all.
Oh, okay, yep. We were talking about, I was going to say like almond butter is another one you can add into your smoothies and your shakes. There's so many different ways you can get, you can make a protein powder-based chocolate that you then put into like a muffin tin with some almond butter in the bottom and put like heavy cream and some of the chocolate protein, and then put that on top, and you can almost make like a Reese's peanut butter cup.
We're kind of seeing that, like fat bombs kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like coconut oil.
Yeah.
and Usually mixed in with either protein or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, to the extreme scenario here is the ketogenic diet. It's really, really hard to get into ketosis and to keep yourself there. And what that means is that your body ends up, you consume predominantly fat, but it almost goes even further to the point where your body starts using ketones to actually, as an energy source. It's a very efficient energy source. It's just really hard to get yourself into ketosis. You could imagine eating nothing but vegetables and lean meat day in and day out for 3 to 4 weeks before you finally get into ketosis. And as soon as you have a carbohydrate, you're out of ketosis, and it's going to take you another 7 to 10 days to get back into it. Now, it's extremely effective for epileptics. It's extremely effective for sensory processing disorders and autism and things like that. They've seen profound changes with people, but it's just really, really hard to get yourself into ketosis. So, but fat bombs, it came out of the reason that came to me is because fat bombs came out of the ketogenic diet. Is how do we get more fat into the system without having to sit down and eat like tubs of coconut oil? But we can do something tasty. And minimize how much. So like cacao nibs can be another way to get, if you like chocolate, I keep coming back to chocolate. But,
Someone wants chocolate.
So,
Is this fasting day?
no, but I can tell you I haven't had enough calories today. So, what am I here? It's 7:15, so I got about another hour or so that I gotta kind of get through my intake, so. All right, question, doable? How do we get other people on board? See, the nice thing here is that you don't have to really convince a lot of people. You can still continue to make the meals that you want. I'm not gonna lie, in my household, my kids often push back on, the barbecued steak and the the sweet potato or the vegetables. But we make some, my little guy loves carrots. Our daughter loves cauliflower. So we've always usually got those on hand, and we just make some little minor adjustments, but we kind of hold strong that this is what we're eating. But the nice thing here is that you're not totally changing everything to the point where you're starving yourself, and now you've got to fight with your spouse because they want something, right? Like you're still getting a lot of good nutrients here, but you're still consuming meals, is what I'm saying, is you're not shutting down and stopping your meal intake at all, or your food intake. So, oh no, I can't go with you because I'm fasting, or I'm not eating. No, you can eat. It's just when you get to the restaurant, how can I get something that's going to satisfy and give me? So when I'm looking at the menu, I'm like, ooh, that salmon with, the bok choy and other things looks awesome. I'm going to have something like that, which I can satisfy. I get the protein, I get the fat, and I get some of the other stuff. No, I don't want the rice. Can you swap it out for some other vegetables? Every restaurant will do that for you now. They're fully aware of gluten intolerances and other things. And I've even seen where my wife was just at Moxie's last week, and the chef came out. Okay, I understand you got some food allergies here. What do I need to know? That's excellent. It's really, really good.
What about beans and legumes and stuff?
Some would say that they're rich in phytates, which are considered an anti-nutrient. What that means is that when you're consuming them, they can affect the way in which your GI tract processes them, which then causes you to pull nutrients out of and block absorption of certain things. They are high in protein. My philosophy on it is limit them, consume them sparingly. I wouldn't eat beans and legumes every single day. So I've had many a conversation with vegans and vegetarians about it because it's obviously it's a big predominant way in which they get their protein. So
Starchy vegetables are okay then?
like a white potato.
Or sweet potatoes, or?
Yeah, so I'd have like a white potato I might do sparingly, but on a day where you've done your vigorous exercise.
Right.
But sweet potato on the other day, a lower glycemic type of vegetable. Yeah.
And then obviously grass-fed beef is extremely expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So
Can
if
be.
you can't afford it,
Mm-hmm.
it's like,
So with that one, I always say try to choose where you're going to win and you're going to lose some. So you got to give something to gain something.
Yeah.
So if you can make changes, if I was to say in priority, I would choose the meat first, and then go to your organic vegetables and your fruit and all the other stuff. Just because the source of protein there is so much greater. So if you had to make a change in a budgetary restraint, I would choose the meat first and foremost before I'd make the organic choice on the vegetables. If I was shuttling my grocery dollars that way. Now, I mean, the Coots, the group that we use, it's more expensive than conventional, but it's less than organic in the stores. So they've got pretty darn good prices as far as that goes when you compare it to some of the other stores and things. So look for that when we do an order. Really good group. They've got a lot of good sources. They get chicken, turkey, beef, elk, bison, ostrich. They do import wild rainbow trout. I miss anything? Venison. They have venison. Lamb. I think I got them all. Pork. That's the other one too. So. Okay. So we got a strategy.
Yep.
I've got some handouts for you to help you.
Thank you.
Welcome, book.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, kind of some guidelines that you can follow along. And of course, don't forget, if you need to shoot me an email, let me know if you need any direction. What I'm probably going to do is follow up this with a couple of great websites that you can go to just to read more and kind of understand and go deeper and remind yourselves about it. And I'll post this as well. So
So for those of us that can't do a really hard workout, because I've had 2 injuries,
Mhm.
I swim 3 days a week, I do an
That's
athletic
great.
class. Is that a good enough, like, workout?
oh, for sure.
Would you say?
Yep. So I used to train an individual who was in a wheelchair, and I had to explain to him. I said, I can't do what those guys are doing. And I said, well, that's not the point. For you, we're going to get your arms going as fast as you can. And I could have all of you do that right now, is just pump your arms as fast as you can, and you'll be sweating within minutes. So it's all relative based on, what a high intensity workout would be to one person could be completely different to someone else. Mildred, the 90-year-old grandmother, it could be walking at 2.5 kilometers an hour on the treadmill, could be her like really panting, right? Versus somebody else may run at 10, right? So it's all relative to what that individual is or can do. Same with weights. It's like, 200 pounds might be heavy to one person, but it might be a starting point for someone else. So you can totally do that with swimming. Like if you had challenges with hips or knees, I've had folks just stand in the water and start pushing their arms back and forth for a minute on, and then rest for a minute, and then do it again, or with a float belt and doggy paddling. I only got one good arm, so let's just get that arm going. So you can always modify things and scale it however you need to. So. It's what I work at the CrossFit 613 gym, and everybody thinks, well, it's all the same as what you see on the videos and everything. Everybody's doing crazy things. There's women there. There's a gal who's she's awesome. She's totally inspiring. She's probably 150 pounds overweight, but they're able to scale everything. So the workout may call for pull-ups. Well, she can't do a pull-up. But she can step on the bench, grab onto the bar, and then just lower herself down. Step on the bench, grab the bar, and lower herself. And she's just working at that. At first, it started with just pulling the band. So working, and it's been awesome to watch how she's transformed here in the last year. She's lost almost 80 pounds at this point. So, yeah. So, okay. All right, gang.
Get out of here so I can eat.
She said it.
I see
You're very
it.
welcome.
Yes, yeah, thank you
Yep.
very much. Thank you.